I think something was imitating my parents when I was alone. I don't usually talk about this, but I feel like this community might understand. Around 2 years ago, I lived in an apartment that felt off. I was 16, often home alone after school. That's when I started hearing it. A voice calling me from the kitchen or the laundry room. It sounded exactly like my father or my mother. It always asked for help, told me to come over, but I knew they weren't home. The voice never imitated anyone else. I think that's because I don't have any extended family. It's always just been me, my mom, and my dad. That's all it knew. That's all it needed to mimic. My dog was terrified. She refused to enter the kitchen, even though her food and water were there. She would shake, frozen in fear, until my parents came back. The day before we moved out, my father found long, dirty white hairs in my bedroom. The bathroom smelled like sewage, no matter how much we cleaned. He still says that apartment felt wrong. I'm 18 now, almost 19. I still don't know what that thing was, only that it wasn't human, and that it wanted me to trust it. Turns out, I was not alone. Alright, so this happened to me a few weeks ago, and after discussions with my partner, I've decided to share my experience with you all. So near my place of work, there are a few abandoned houses. Not abandoned city houses, but houses tucked away in the forest. The acreage these houses sit upon abuse my employer's property, which is why I even know about them. From what I understand, the homes are owned by one family and for reasons unknown, left full in the forest without taking any of their belongings. I'm talking garages and bedrooms full of stuff, and just one day they left and never sold the property, so the homes have sat to rot for the last 20 to 30 years. Though these houses are very isolated from the nearest road, local kids are aware of these houses. Over the years, kids have partied up there, vandalized the hell out of these homes, beer cans and broken glass and spray paint tagging, but can you blame them? I've explored these houses many times with coworkers, and each time we're explored, nothing scary or paranormal occurred, just your regular abandoned house stuff. It's obvious the local kids have pillaged these homes, turning drawers out and sifting through every closet hoping to find some treasure. A few weeks ago, I decided I wanted to go for a nature walk and revisit these houses. It was a bright sunny day, so I went for it, alone. In hindsight, this was a bad idea. Once I got to the houses, I paused and took in my surroundings, listening to the nature all around me. Squirrels traipsing through the forest, birds singing, bugs buzzing, deer in the distance, the woods being very alive all around me. I decided to go into the largest of the homes. This house was likely lived in by the grandparents of this family because the furnishings inside were quite dated and the clothes in the closet were not modern. I know the layout of this house, as I've been in it many times before, so I enter through the garage, carefully to keep my eyes on the hole in the garage roof in fear of a raccoon family I suspect lives there, judging by the scat always near the hole. I go through the door and into the hallway that leads me to the kitchen. As I'm walking down the short 20-foot hallway, I glance in a small bedroom on my right and I see freshly painted smiley face on a wall. Not just a happy face, but a very creepy smiley face, like from that Smile movie. But again, local kids party up here all the time, so I think nothing of it and continue walking to the kitchen. The kitchen is the center of the home. From the kitchen I have three options. Continue to the living room that connects to the wing of the home that overlooks a pool, go down the cracked door to the basement, or head upstairs to the bedrooms. Behind me was the kitchen table and windows overlooking the yard. As I paused to ponder where I wanted to go, something happened. Out of nowhere, an overpowering fear of dread came over me, and every single hair on my body stood on end. It was the feeling of something being behind me and on top of me at the same time, like I was less than a second away from being attacked by an apex predator. Upon realizing I felt this way, I remained still, and I held my breath and listened, and I could hear nothing. Zero sound to indicate something was there, but nonetheless I was shook. So I slowly but hurriedly exited the house in the same way I had come in, down the hall and out the garage. Once out of the house, I walked to overgrown lawns so I could peer into the kitchen and see the whole house simultaneously. I paused again to observe and listen. The feeling of something being behind me I felt in the kitchen was now a feeling of something being in front of me. Something in the house seeing me? It was then that I realized I couldn't hear anything. No birds, no squirrels, no bugs, nothing. No life. All of the forest life I had observed a few moments ago was gone. There was an eerie stillness around me. That stillness, that silence, and the feeling of something in the house seeing me was enough. I left. After that, I walked away from that house and I felt like I was being followed for the first 100 yards or so, but again, no sound. It wasn't until 400 yards or so that I began to hear wildlife. Once I was a good distance away, I called my partner and explained to her in a hushed tone what just happened, and she forbid me to ever go back to that house. Obviously, I agreed. I made it to my truck. I was safe. In conclusion, I have never ever experienced anything like that in my life, but I'll never go explore these homes again. Whatever was in there stayed there, and I'd stayed in that kitchen another minute, I'm unsure what would have happened to me. Now, I didn't see anything. Hell, I didn't even hear anything. But what I felt in the core of my being was a malicious presence that intentionally let me know it was observing me, and frankly, just typing this has my skin crawling, and I can't shake seeing that smiley face on the wall. Its grin was certainly sinister. I live in the heart of Appalachia, and this is easily the most terrifying story of one of my experiences. The story may be short, or it may be drawn out. I'm recounting these events as I type it, as it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I have experienced, and it brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened maybe 2-3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia and have for my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and nighttime is a darkness that you can never dream of unless experienced. I was with a friend, I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening, doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on the nearby trail to smoke a joint. This is not a particularly long trail, but it is very dense in the woods that surround it, and it was easy to get freaked out when thinking of your surroundings. We finally get halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, when we stop, pack our joint, and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive tonight. There are always noises in the woods, but this amount of animal activity for the time, at this point it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting as any sort of predatory animal in the area may cause a disturbance. We finished smoking and continued our walk when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. As soon as the forest goes quiet, there is a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking humanoid voice, shaky and uncertain. Almost like an old children's toy. Like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice, if you know what I mean. This immediately sets us off. We bolt directly down the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer per se, but no matter how far we ran down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over with no quieting or stopping. At this point, I am convinced that we are in genuine danger. Something I have felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, we exit the trail, grasping for breath, and almost at the verge of tears of how frightening this was. We begin to exit the trail, and about 5 minutes from the exit, there is a bone-shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream from directly behind us. I know what a mountain lion sounds like. This was not an animal. This was not someone playing or watching a movie. This scream sent birds flying from nests and made my heart drop into my stomach. It was the most genuinely depraved and violent scream that I've ever heard. Something found me in Maine. Back in 2010, I was driving around looking for a place to hunt. I finally stopped at a piece of town-owned property that I had only gone on once before, and that was to fish for trout in a brook that crossed about a mile in. After parking, I started down an old dirt road that split the property for its entire length. The day was very nice, and nothing seemed unusual. I followed the road until I got to the far side of an old wood yard that abutted the stream. That's when it just got quiet. The opening was probably 20 yards across with a brook hidden behind some alders on the other side. I sensed it before I heard it. Something told me not to go across the clearing to the stream. I've spent a lifetime in the woods and I've only had that feeling a few times. The first sound that I heard were heavy steps, very deliberate and slow. I couldn't see what was making that sound, and for no reason I felt fear. I knew that I did not want to see what was approaching me. It stopped at the brook and I heard it cross and walk to the edge of the alders, then stop. All that I had was a single shot 20 gauge with birdshot. I had a feeling of danger. It moved on the inside of the alders to my left a few yards at a time. The only glimpse that I caught was a dark, narrow figure, very tall, as in at least 7 foot. Not knowing what else to do, I pointed my shotgun in the air and touched off a shot. It just stayed where it was. I shouted. It did not move. That little voice told me to go. Don't run, but go. As I backed up, the alders where I last heard it moved and parted as if it was getting a better look, but whatever it was stayed right there as if to let me know it saw me and to not go further. That mile walk back to my truck felt as if I was walking through a cemetery at night, always turning around looking everywhere. This encounter has played over and over in my mind. I don't know what that was. I've never gone back only because something inside me is saying it would not end well. 14 years later and it still scares me. Anyway, that's my encounter and I've never told anyone until now. Strange encounter in the Sierra Nevadas on John Muir Trail. I'm a long-distance hiker. I've hiked the entire JMT twice in both directions. I've hiked many miles of the Pacific Crest Trail, as well as numerous random trips in my time in the outdoors. I have probably a year of collective time sleeping outside in the wilderness and having hiked over 2,000 miles collectively. I've only managed to encounter 2 bears, some coyotes. I've smelled a mountain lion and heard one chirping near me. I'm not a big believer in cryptids and such, but I have a story that makes me question that. In 2022, I hiked the John Muir Trail in the Sierra Nevadas in California. It is a long-distance hiking trail that spans 211 miles from Yosemite Valley to Mount Whitney and takes about a month to complete. The trail is remote and located in some of the most amazing untouched nature the country has to offer. I hiked the previous year in the traditional southbound direction, and in 2022 I hiked the trail northbound towards Yosemite with my wife and a female friend of ours. This story is on that 2022 trip. One day, about halfway through our trip, when the afternoon was getting ready to end, we decided to camp in a place called Gross Meadows. The previous year I enjoyed fishing here, and the gentle rivers that curve back and forth through the meadow makes a nice place to swim and filter water. We started to make camp for the night, and I noticed a large buck about 10 yards from us staring at us. It then started approaching and I started to yell at it just to get it away. It circled around us a bit and then left from us down the way we came from. I decided I was going to go catch a few fish before the sun went down, and maybe we would have some fish tacos for the night. The girls agreed and said they would finish making camp. We split a 3-person tent so it was easy. As I went down toward the small river in the meadow, there was a large rock near where we were camping. It was about the size of a 2-car garage and about that tall as well. Large enough you couldn't see over it. When I passed it, I noticed a young man come walking around in my direction. I was surprised because this time most people are already getting camp ready as it gets cold and dark fast in the Sierra. I was also a bit confused on where he had come from as he was not on a trail. He was just walking straight through a meadow with a river running through it, away from any trail. He got closer. I noticed he was only wearing a small day pack, blue running shorts and a white t-shirt, all completely clean. That may not sound strange, but when you're multiple days away from any trailhead that leads out of the mountain, it sure is strange. I was kind of walking away from him toward the river, but it seemed like he was following me, so I stopped and said, "Hey man, how's it going?" He replied, "Hello," in a very plain monotone voice. He then said to me in the same voice, "What are you doing?" I replied, "Well, I'm going fishing," as if it wasn't obvious I had a rod and reel in my hand. He didn't laugh. As he kept following, he said, "What will you do with the fish?" I said, "If it's big enough and not pregnant, I'm gonna eat it." At this point, I've stopped by a little beach on the side of the river, and he passed by me and I felt relief. He seemed off to me. But then just when he was about 20 feet past me, he stopped and turned around along the beach and squatted down and watched me fish. Eventually I pulled one in and it was a good size. I prepared to clean it and just as I pulled the guts out of the fish, he said, "How does it taste?" I looked over at him waiting to hear a joke or something and he was smiling. A terrible feeling came over me, like the hair on your neck type of feeling. Said, "Well, I have to clean it first, man. And then cook it, you know." I said it in a way that would have come off to normal people as "I'm done talking to you, fuck off" type of way. I stuck my knife in the sand in front of me and didn't put it away. The man after a while said, "I'm hiking 30 miles today." I said, "That's nice, man, have fun." And he just stood up and walked off into the meadow towards a tree line, not on or near any trail, and vanished into the woods. I went back to camp and didn't really say anything to the girls because I didn't want to scare them. The night came in, we ate, and went to bed, and I mostly forgot about it. I felt woken up. I noticed both girls sitting up and my wife said, "There's something there." I was so tired I just said, "No there isn't, go to bed guys." I laid down and so did the girls, and within seconds heard a very fast shuffling sound, and I sat up and so did the girls. I said, "Oh yeah, there is definitely something there." I used a small foam sitting mat outside my inner tent in the vestibule of shoes at night and to sit on during the day, and I saw it moving and could feel it moving. Something was literally right outside my tent. I grabbed my headlamp and our bear spray, and with my heart exploding out of my chest, I zipped open the tent ready to battle whatever was there, and there was nothing. Not even a distant sound. It was dead silent, like ear-ringing silent. "Maybe a squirrel or something, or that buck," I said. We laid down and this ended up happening like 7 more times. Every time nothing. Eventually I started to actually pass out because of how exhausted I was, and I only really remember cursing at it as I fell to sleep. I woke up again and I looked over and both my wife and our friend were asleep. I heard the sound again and I got ready with my bear spray and worked up my courage. I zipped open the tent and there he was, about 15 feet away, the same guy on all fours in an almost push-up-like position, staring directly at me with that same face. It was completely silent. Then he crawled backwards into the dark with a speed I can't explain. I woke up. I was so relieved it was a dream. In the morning I told them I dreamed there was something at the tent and they looked at me like I was joking. Our friend said, "Yeah, there was, didn't you? You didn't dream that." My heart sank. I said, "What about that guy?" And they said, "What guy?" They only remember seeing that guy down with me by the river, so he was real, even if it was just a dream that he visited the tent. They also recalled not understanding why they fell asleep so fast when something was outside, and that they felt like there was a blank in their memory before falling asleep. We all agreed that there was a general feeling that just felt off in this place. I don't really tell this story because it sounds fake and stupid to me when I say it to myself, but it is real. I'll never sleep in that meadow again.